This video is a Q&A session on the telephone intercom system, and so I'm going to be offering explanations on the PBX itself, or the PABX itself, and then also I'm going to be talking about the telephone distribution points and perhaps also the kind of cables to use in the setup of your PABX. All right, so let's start with the PABX itself, that is the telephone intercom system exchange. These are the points through which you can make connections into the PABX, and you realize that the PABX has two different kinds of ports. We have the first group of ports, which are labeled as line, and on some PABX systems you'll see it labeled as CO lines. So you have, if it's a 4 CO line system, you have CO1, CO2, CO3, and CO4. And we also have the extension port numbers, or the extension ports. And when you put in an external source or an external telephone line into the CO port or the CO line ports, that can enable you receive calls from outside this PABX system on any of your extensions from extension 1 to 16, or any kind of extension number you have within your PBX setup. So for instance, in Ghana, we have Vodafone lines that will help you to be able to communicate from one city to the other, or from even from Ghana to an external source. Those kind of lines can be connected into this line ports that you find on the PABX system, so that apart from your building in which you have set up the PBX system, you can receive calls from outside the building in which you are installing this PBX system when you are using the CO lines or the line ports you have here. But you can decide to use any one of the line ports, so that you have only one external line port that will enable people reach out to you from any external source. So once you advertise the telephone number for that one line port connected to any of the line ports, when people call in, you can program the PBX system so that the calls can be received into your PBX system from an external source, which is not emanating from your PBX machine. And these other ports, which are the extensions, are the ones that you connect to your telephone lines or telephone handsets that will be sitting in your PABX setup, as you already know. All right, so that is the difference between the two sets of ports that you find on the PABX. And then again, many have been asking us to whether the PABX can be used without any programming. Yes. For example, as you can see on this particular PBX that I'm holding, this is a 32, or this is a 16, sorry, it's a 16 extension PBX, because we have from 601 up to 616. It's a 16 extension PBX. That means the maximum number of extensions or telephone handsets that can be used concurrently will be 16. And you cannot go beyond the 16, that is the 16 number of extensions connected to this kind of PABX system. If you want to do a larger PBX system, then you need to go for a machine that has the capacity or the number of extensions that you are looking for. And let me also mention that there are smaller PBX systems than this. We have even 6 extension PBX, 8 extension, 32, and so on and so forth. So that is about that. And then also, many have asked questions about the kind of cables that should be used in connecting extensions from the PBX into the telephone sockets. You can use a Cat5 cable, or you can use a Cat6 cable, and you can also use a Cat3 kind of cable to connect from your PBX into your telephone sockets, and that is what you should note. But you cannot use this kind of flexible cable, which has four cables within it. It's a flexible cable that is used to connect from the telephone socket to your telephone handset. because it's so flexible, this kind of cable is not recommended for connecting from the PBX itself into your telephone sockets, because you would have to draw the cable, maybe perhaps through conduit pipes or even in ceilings. This kind of cable will get bruised along the way, and so it's not so much recommended when it comes to the setup of your telephone intercom system. Let me come to the telephone distribution points, or the telephone DP as it is referred to for short. The telephone DP, here is an example of a telephone DP. This telephone DP is not it doesn't enable you to extend the number of extensions that can be connected to a PBX system. So that, for example, this is a 16 extension PBX. It can carry a maximum of 16 extensions, or you can have 16 different handsets. For instance, a handset like this can connect 16 of these handsets to this kind of system when you are creating a setup. When you use a telephone distribution point, it doesn't allow you to go beyond the 16. But what the telephone distribution point does is that this serves as a junction between your PBX and then your telephone sockets. So each, for instance, extension 1, which is the first extension, can just be placed on a pair on this, for instance, a pair on this telephone distribution point, so that you take an output of that same pair and take into a telephone socket, so it doesn't increase the capacity of your PBX system. Another question that I keep receiving as well is the fact that, is this kind of telephone distribution point necessary at all? The answer is that it's necessary in some instances. For example, if you have a building of which just a single building, there will not be need for a telephone distribution point. You can just directly connect your cable running from your PBX direct into your telephone socket, and then from the telephone socket it can go into your telephone handsets without using the telephone distribution point. Now, the point at which the telephone distribution point becomes necessary is this: if you have two buildings and yet you use just this single PBX machine to serve the two buildings, you can place the telephone system or the PBX into one of the buildings and let your extension, the number of extensions that will be in the first building with this kind of telephone system, you can take from the PBX direct to the sockets in the same building as the PBX itself. Now, the second building, you can connect all your sockets, your telephone sockets, onto the telephone distribution point, and then you can use a single cable, or maybe if, let's say, is 4 extensions that you are connecting to these, since a Cat 6 or Cat 5 cable has about 4 pairs in it, you can use each pair for each extension and tap from the telephone distribution point into the PBX. So you can use just one cable to move from the building in which the crone or the telephone distribution point is into the PBX itself. And so that is the kind of scenario that requires the telephone distribution point, or the use of the telephone distribution point. So that is what I want to explain in this video, particularly today. And in a subsequent video, I will try to offer further explanations when it comes to the telephone intercom system. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me still have your feedback and questions about this video. Thank you so much for watching once again. See you in the next video. Thank you.